Talking Point. I'm your host, Dr. Anim-Wright, coming to you live from the studios of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation in Accra. Talking Point comes to you live this and every Sunday with issues of national concern. We engage you in discussions for informed decision-making. We are also streaming live on GBC Ghana Online, on Facebook at Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and as always, welcome those listening to us on Unique 95.7. On June 28 this year, social activist Ibrahim Muhammad, popularly known as Kaka, was shot and eventually died from his wounds. His death sparked unrest and a riot in his hometown of Ejura. When the military were called to intervene, 2 were killed, leaving a nation demanding answers and action. In response, the Minister of Interior set up a committee of inquiry, and last week, the committee presented its long-awaited report. Tonight, we will review the report and assess the recommendations and their potential impact on averting similar incidents in the future. For those listening to us, we encourage you to kindly send in your messages during the show using our WhatsApp number 055-744-6429. So to help us delve into the issue of the Ejura Committee report, with me in the studio is Dr. Vincent Adzahlie Mensah. He's a security analyst. Welcome, Doctor. And via Zoom, we have Dr. Festus Aubyn. He's a regional coordinator, research and capacity building at the West African Network for Peacebuilding, WANEP. So good evening to you two. So let me start with you, Dr. Adzahlie Mensah. I just wanted to start with the terms of reference of the committee. So I lifted this from the Ministry of Interior website. It said the committee were to conduct a public inquiry into the circumstances that led to the unfortunate occurrences at Ejura in the Ashanti region and inquire into any matter which they consider incidental or reasonably related to the cause of the events and the associated deaths and injuries, and then submit a final report. They say at the date, we all know they asked for an extension, they got it. So now we have the report. I just wanted you to, as a starting point, you have read the report, you have seen the recommendations. What are your assessments of how faithful the committee stayed within the mandate they were presented when they began this process?
Thank you, and good evening to our listeners, and I'm happy to be here. In the first place, let's commend the committee for the work they have done. Granted that if you look at the time limit that was given to them, it was very tough, and I wasn't surprised that they asked for an extension. So you can see from the report that they were under a lot of pressure, which made them to produce the report they have produced. And while commending them for a good work done, I would say that it could have been better because there are a number of issues left unattended in the report. There are a number of issues that they could have worked on better. The most important thing to look at is that in terms of being faithful to their terms of reference, they were, but they went to some extent in the report where you will see that they were passing judgments on a number of issues, which is a bit tricky. I don't know how that is part of their mandate to say this is false or this is true. That is where I think a lot of work is needed. They may have reasons for doing so, but I think that in terms of staying faithful to their mandate, they did. But there were a number of tricky areas where I think they veered into areas that they shouldn't probably have gone to.
Okay. So, Dr. Aubyn, I'm sure you've also read the report. You've probably mulled over some of the findings and the recommendations. Threshold of expectations, did it meet yours?
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers and also to my co-panelists. Yes, like my co-panelists, said, if you look at the TOR and also the timeline for them to produce the report, I think to a great extent they were able to do justice to their mandate, except the fact that in some aspect they went beyond what they were expected to do. And one of it is what my co-panelists said, passing judgment on a matter which is still pending in court. I think for that they went, it was totally uncalled for, I mean, at this stage. And also the fact that they made certain recommendations regarding compensation for victims without actually also delving into issues of justice for those who were killed, especially during the riot. I think those were just some of the few reservations I have about the report, but in totality, I think they did a great job looking at the timelines given to them.
Okay, so let me stay with you, and I'll also ask this question to Dr. Adzahlie Mensah, but let me stay with you. Both of you have mentioned that there were areas that they veered into that were past their mandate or outside their mandate. On the other hand, some people are saying that there were other things within their mandate that they probably didn't delve into enough. For example, the RECSEC. What are your thoughts about what they wrote about that, and where do you think there might be things that are lacking that could have made those recommendations more robust going forward?
All right. I mean, if you look at during the public inquiry, some of the issues that the regional minister, for example, brought up, and if you look at the recommendations given, I mean, I agree with people who say that perhaps the recommendations didn't respond so much to some of the lapses that we saw from the testimonies of the regional minister, the police commanders, also at the regional level, as well as those at the level of the district. And so recommending only the training of RESEC, MUSEC, DISEC members in conflict and crisis situation, I think was a bit general and not specific to the case that we are dealing with. Though I also agree that moving forward, we need to train especially the chairs of these committees, because most of them come to that office with limited knowledge about security matters, perhaps also because of the background from which they came from. And so the recommendation itself is good, but in terms of the specificities relating to the case that we are dealing with, I think that they could have done much more better in terms of making some recommendations with regards to the minister's role in this whole situation and some of the excesses that we saw at Ejura.
Okay, Dr. Mensah, you know, one of the words that the committee used was catalyst. They indicated that the Ashanti minister, regional minister, inviting the military to intervene was the catalyst. So if the goal here is to ensure that this doesn't happen again, what else could and should they have recommended to really make this a more robust recommendation that went to the heart of the issue?
Thank you very much. I will come to the question, but let me say that the one thing that stands out in the report is a failure to recognize the security context in Ejura. Now, in producing such a report, it is important that they contextualize it within the Ashanti region, but more specifically to where is Ejura, Secretary, who are there? Because one of the people who appeared there, including the Ashanti regional minister, made the point that Ejura was identified as a hotspot during the 2020 elections, and the committee captured that. If you captured that, the question is, what made it a hotspot? Anyone who is familiar, any security person who is familiar with Ejura knows that it's a place where the security situation has been known to be volatile for a number of years, and the committee should have used this opportunity to contextualize its report and make important recommendations beyond the transfer of police commander, beyond the dismissal of an MCE, and beyond the training of MUSEC and other bodies. Now, I agree with my colleague that that recommendation was too general, and the focus of it relates not to the issue, but more so to the question, a catalyst for the event. Now, invitation to the military. The committee's own report lends credence to why police will quickly invite the military. And I'll give one example. If you see the report, they were quick to make recommendations about what should happen to the district police commander. When it came to the military commander, the army commander, they said the military should take control of it. Now, so if I'm a police officer and I know that if something happens, I'm going to be held responsible, I will shift post by deferring to the powers that be to invite the military, since that is treated as a secret society where things about them do not have to come to the public domain. And that is the problem. So the invitation to the military and what it caused itself has not been addressed in the recommendations of the committee. So if this was a fundamental issue that catalyzed the situation we witnessed, why wouldn't you make important recommendations about it? That's where the concern is. Maybe because they didn't have enough time. Or maybe in future, in such committees, we should get some other people who are into practical policing. So we have retired IGPs, retired army officers. We should get some of them into these committees, and they will use the opportunity and their professional experience over time to inform the production of the report. Those things will have tightened the report more pointedly.
And Dr. Aubyn, you know, Dr. Adzahlie mentioned the recommendations of the military being shrouded in let them follow the procedures, whereas that was not the same with the police. That was something I was going to ask, because I'm sure the police also have their procedures. That same reference could have been made about, so I'll have you comment on that. But back to what Dr. Mensah was talking about in terms of Ejura. One of the Nifahini, I think, of Ejura sub-traditional area, he said, and this is lifted from the report, he explained that notwithstanding the provocative nature of sending a police water cannon vehicle to the cemetery, knowing the youth of Ejura, they could still have rioted. This, he explained, was because Ejura over the years had experienced lots of violence, especially during the political seasons, where the military always had to intervene to cool things down. My question is, if the military and the police have worked so well together over the years, what exactly happened here in this instance in June, where that same cooperation appears to have broken down and led to the unfortunate killings of two people, and also, you know, those who were injured?
I think that, thank you. I think that from the report, we need to look at the context of this event and also during election period. Now, during election period, we have what we call the National Election Security Task Force that has the opportunity to plan ahead of the election. And so they're able to identify all the hotspots and put in place the necessary security measures to deal with any unforeseen situations. Now, in this context where we had a riot, this is not something that was planned, although there were some intelligence information which had issues in terms of the analysis of it and also how the intelligence informed the situation. I think there was issue of coordination failure, right from the level of the political leadership at the regional level, RISEC, to the operational level, the commanders of the police and military, and also to the men on ground at Ejura. And that is why, in some instance, if you look at the testimony of the district commander, he said he was not even aware of some of the deployments. You know, that shows that communication and information sharing during the period was a little bit limited at the different levels. And I think that is what might have contributed to the situation that we found in Ejura. So I will attribute it basically one to the coordination problem and also issues of intelligence failure, which they couldn't really put in place the appropriate measures to deal with during this specific instance.
Okay, so Dr. Adzahlie Mensah, some would say that they would have SOPs already in place that would cater for emergency situations and non-emergency situations. But I still want to push this a bit because I'm still not sure how the report addresses some of the fundamental issues that happened at Ejura. One, they say there were no warning shots. There were no warning shots or verbal warning, I think, that was issued, though the military said they were. They said that did not happen. Two, I think one of the officers said that the crowd was 150 meters away, which clearly doesn't mean that they were posing an immediate threat. And three, there were people shot in the back. So when you analyze all these things, my concern is that the recommendation of training, the recommendation of an SOP, how are they going to help? And the transfer of people, and how are they really addressing what really led to this happening?
I think you're asking very important and probing questions that those who receive this report need to sit and ask of the report and use that context to see how the recommendations can be further enhanced and be connected to other issues. A number of things. For example, if you see the recommendation, they were clear in the report that one of the things that led to what we are discussing was that the police were overwhelmed. Now, if you look at the report, it's talking about structural expansion of the police station in Ejura. That doesn't solve the police being overwhelmed. So that's one area. Now, if you look at the military and security guys who came there, they were clear that they have some operational standards and protocols they follow. Whatever it is, you take their word for it. That is what they do. They know what they are doing and why they are doing it. The committee's concern was that this use of force was inappropriate by the military. If it was inappropriate by the military, what should happen? Okay. You said the invitation of the police, the military was unnecessary. If it was unnecessary, what should have happened as the alternative? And that's the question people want an answer to. If you say people withdrew too early because they were there on the 28th and then they've left and this happened on the 29th, what should be the recommendation for that? You know, and if you see the events that happened, you see that at that moment, material moment, the police were not prepared for riotous situation. If they were not prepared for riotous situation, what should happen? Because if a policeman following standard procedures for riot control, the dressing itself will make sure that if you throw stones at me, it is nothing. Okay, because they will have dressed properly with head helmets and then shield and all that. They will have had tear gas and all that. These things were not there. What were your recommendations related to that? So there are a number of gaps that, as my colleague is saying, as I'm saying, requires that we reflect more on these recommendations. Perhaps, as we are all suggesting, the problem actually is that the committee probably did not have enough time to be able to reflect on the report and to be able to reflect on the incidents and to make the recommendations. And it's a lesson to all of us that next time when we establish such committees, we should give them quality time, quality support, that they will be able to deliver on their mandate more effectively. So it's a matter of the Ministry of Interior now looking at this report and say, okay, this is the basic that we have. What can we make of it? And they need, I will recommend that when they get this report, they should read the narrations in the report and the findings column of the report more carefully before they come to the recommendations. There are a lot of things in the findings column that could help decision making than if they just go and focus on the recommendations. There will be huge gaps. there for them.
And I think to your point, maybe if they had retired military IGP or police officers too, we would have probably made their recommendations
exactly
more. Dr. Aubyn, I wanted to ask you, before the committee began its work, there was a lot of talk about whether it should be a commission, whether it should be a committee, or a ministerial committee or a commission of inquiry within the framework of I think, Article 278 of the Constitution. Having completed the work, do you think either would have made a difference, or was the ministerial committee enough, and what they have brought out adequate for moving forward?
Okay, I think that the key issue here is uncovering, what actually happened at Ejura on the 29th June, and if the ministerial committee has been able to do that, I think that we should focus on rather the content of this report and whether the terms of reference that were given to this committee was enough to really uncover all the issues that really happened at Ejura. That is, for me, the most important, and for us not to repeat, or for that situation not to reoccur again. Whether it's a commission of inquiry, or ministerial committee, the purpose is to uncover whatever happened there in order not for us to repeat similar situations in future. And for me, I think that we need to look at more, like my colleague said, the narratives and also the findings, and see how we can juxtapose the two and implement them, and also do the necessary reforms and structural reforms and policy reforms that could help to avert such situations in the future. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really tell you if it's a commission, whether they would have had more time, or their recommendations could be binding, or ministerial committee, the legal dimensions of that. But for me, I think the most important thing is that they were given a job. Have they been able to do it? And what are the issues we can take forward in terms of improving future riot situations, in terms of ensuring that we don't have much excesses like we saw at Ejura?
So I think the crux of the issue for those going either way was not time or anything. The issue was on not being able to subpoena anyone, not being able to have anyone come and give information that may be deemed critical. And so if the committee relied only on voluntary reports from individuals, could the report have been stronger and more robust if they could have actually had the mandate to bring people in that would have been compelled to answer certain questions, which would have in turn probably made the report more constructive for those watching? And I don't know what you think about that, Dr. Adzahlie Mensah.
Yeah, and also if it were a commission with the powers of maybe a court or something, if you look at the report, the committee was suggesting that a lot of people practically came there to tell lies. Now, that will not happen in otherwise. So that is where the concern has been, plus what you said. And it is important that as a nation, we ask ourselves, what are the best ways in handling situations such as this? Because I don't think any Ghanaian, including those who shot the bullet that day, is happy with the loss of life. And all of us should be committed to doing things in ways that will help improve the quality of life of our people. So I think that is where the dynamics lie for those who are asking for a commission of inquiry, so that we can have something happening at a status that we can all respect. That when people who have responsibility to answer questions get there, they will take it more serious. They will know that they are in a kind of court of law, and whatever they say could have implications for them. They could be charged for perjury and some of those things.
Okay. Dr. Aubyn, you and I have had conversations in the past on the show about the youth and employment, what that could possibly lead to, and everything else. I was struck by the recommendation number 10, where the committee recommended the sports or other recreational facility in Ejura, in their words, to rechannel the energies of the youth. I would just leave it there and just ask what your thoughts are about this specific recommendation.
Thank you. I think when I saw that recommendation, I was also probably surprised, because that is not enough. When people are hungry, I mean, sports is nothing to them. You know, so I was expecting that the committee probably will go beyond just the recreational activities to look at opportunities that could be provided for the youth in the town or in that municipality to rechannel their energies to productive ventures. So only recommending recreational activities like sports complex and all that, for me, it's not enough to deal with the underlying situations in that municipality. We need to go beyond recreational activities to look at really what are the opportunities that we can provide for the youth in these areas to find, to channel their energies to these productive ventures that can impact on their livelihood, and that will also not make most of them idle and being used for all kinds of violent activities. Because I'm pretty sure that if during this event most of them were working or were busily doing other things, perhaps the momentum and then the level of violence that we experienced perhaps would have been much lower. So I think that that recommendation is inadequate, and it could have gone beyond that to look at real economic opportunities and job creation activities that could have been implemented in that region to support youth development in that area.
Do you wanted to add something?
Yes. You see, that recommendation is kind of interesting. Interesting because it kind of labeled the youth in a certain way in Ejura, which is a mentality about the youth that shifts responsibility from policymakers to the youth. Now, let's understand, in Africa, security is a communal thing. And the committee said that the Kaka's death and the events following it led to what we have. What led to Kaka's death is a lack of protection and security for the individual. And so if I am at Ejura, I know that the way Kaka was killed, I could be killed in the same way. And I like the point my colleague made in the opening statement that there was not a call for justice in the report, which is a gap. You know, so see, if in Europe, in other places, people have jobs to do, they have work to do, but when people are hurt, when a community is angry, when a community is threatened, when a community loses its significant member in ways that are very painful, they will respond. And that response will be spontaneous. So it is important that when we look at this report, we understand that when people have legitimate concerns, they will respond. The assurance we can give to them is that the loss will be properly investigated, and we will come after whoever did it, and we will come after that person using a fair and open process, and we will assure you that this will never happen again. Until we get to that point, communities will always rise up. And it is not because people are hungry or jobless. You know, it is not because people don't have opportunity to play football or run around.
This is Talking Point. We are talking about the Ejura Committee report. We have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Good morning.
It's a good morning and we serve you breakfast.
Not just any breakfast.
Sizzling helping.
A la carte.
And there's much more on offer on GTV Breakfast.
So what's your pleasure than Votras, yeah? At that time of the morning.
You want it served buffet style, complimentary breakfast,
On-site restaurant.
or room service?
We've got you covered.
From Monday to Friday at 6 a.m.
With a trusted team.
So never skip breakfast.
On GTV Breakfast.
Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm your host, Dr. Anim-Wright, and we're coming to you live from the studios of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. In the studio with me is Dr. Vincent Adzahlie. He's a security analyst. And via Zoom, we have Dr. Festus Aubyn, and he's the regional coordinator of WANEP. Thank you again for joining us. So I wanted to talk to you about the structural expansion of the police station. We talked about that, but I was actually looking at it in terms of what is being done with the hospitals, where there's a strategic look, hopefully, at which regions and which districts need hospitals and how they are going to be resourced. Could that be a way, because we do have a deficit in police presence in some communities and some districts, some municipalities, This recommendation, could that be elevated to the point where we are having a national conversation about how every community, every district, every region should be resourced, and what are we going to do about making sure that that amount of resource, whether it's in personnel, whether it's in equipment, is being provided to ensure safety, or to ensure policing, I should say.
Good. I think that I like that framing of the question. Now, it will be simple, rationally calculated in a way that we say, okay, why not increase police presence in hotspots? Why not have nice police stations, adequate enough to take some number of police, have facilities that can handle certain things in various places. But also, if you look at the question of security and criminal dynamics and crime activities, criminals don't stay at one place. They move all over the place. Some even stay at Accra, but they commit their criminal activities in Kumasi or Takoradi or Tamale and come back to stay in Accra. So if you look at it from that angle, those choices may have their own disadvantages. The thing will be to improve on intelligence-led policing, so that we will be able to pick intelligence, and the purpose of intelligence is to effectively ensure that policing is up to the task. They have the information they need to be able to act, to arrest people, to engage with communities, to have conversations with people. And I tell you what, there was an important event somewhere, which I will not talk about because of the sensitivities. But the current Director General of CID Police, he realized, together with the IGP at the time, that, see, if we don't go to talk to the community, it was going to explode. What did they do? They engaged the community. They engaged the leadership of the community and say, we hear your concerns, we know that something is afoot, and we want to take responsibility and assure you that we will take action. That are the things. This kind of engagement with communities is very, very important, and that is one of the things that the committee should, the Ministry of Interior should pick from this report. That, see, it's important to increase police numbers, as the committee said. That's for physical engagement, but it is important to also improve on intelligence-led policing, so that we can be sure that we are picking the information we need. The committee talked about something related to intelligence sharing. Yes, we have various intelligence people. We have the NIB people around who can pick intelligence from communities and share with us. How do we act on them quickly? It was obvious that in the report, intelligence was gathered that things were going to happen. And that's where the committee has to talk about decision-making processes. When we get intelligence, how do we process it? And what do we make of it? Is the essential issue. So the numbers are important. The strategic location of police stations is important. Structural expansion is important, because there are police stations that you go that people, you see a number of CIDs crowded in one small room, struggling to do investigation, where they to keep their files and all that is a problem. So we need to do all this comprehensively, but it's important to understand that unless it's backed by quality intelligence activities, we are on the way to nowhere. So I will say that, yes, let's make those strategic choices, but let's recognize that it is important to support this with intelligence activities.
Okay. Dr. Aubyn, so we have the recommendations, and to your point, whether it was a committee or a commission, they have come out with a set of recommendations that we will be hopefully seeing some action around. So my question to you is twofold. How will these recommendations drive effective change? And secondly, we have all seen situations where committees have been formed, recommendations have been made, like Ayawaso, and the implementation part has been slow in terms of being manifested. What do you think may happen in this instance?
All right. So I think when you look at the recommendations of the committee, For me as a security person, I mean, these recommendations are not too complex. They are very simple, practicable, implementable, without much, I mean, cost implications. Therefore, I expect the government or the Ministry of Interior to implement them without much, I mean, difficulty. I mean, the political will that led to the establishment of the committee should be exercised in this case to actually implement all the recommendations, because apart from the issues relating to the death of Kaka and the two who died as a result of the response of the police and the military, I think the rest are very important and could help us, especially, for example, the issue with training of RESEC, USEC, and DISEC officials. For me, I've always talked about this. It's very, very important because there are most of those chairing these committees who do not have that security background or who do not have the background to take certain key decisions relating to security in those areas. So as we've started the selection of MCs, DCs, and all that, I think it's one of the issues that the Ministry of Interior, together with National Security, can actually work on to enhance the knowledge of those occupying these strategic positions. The development of SOPs also is quite important. I know there are some SOPs in some instances, but since the military has become so much involved in internal affairs, I think it is quite important that we have these SOPs in place to ensure that when these situations are unfolding or are happening, everyone knows what to do. And especially the recommendation regarding also having other allied agencies also as part of these SOPs are also quite important, because in riot situations, it's not only the military and the police. You also have other allied agencies, like the NIB and also the ambulance service, who also play key role in terms of saving life in such situations. So I expect that the ministry and the government actually implement these recommendations without much difficulty at all, because they are quite simple, they are straightforward, and I think some of them have even been implemented already. For example, I don't know whether the district commander is still at post, and also the MCA, right. I mean, already he has pulled out of the race of becoming an MC. Where I think we need to look critically is a compensation for victims of the incidents. I think that the justice component needs to be looked at, because without justice, it's quite difficult to get the kind of confidence and trust of the community going forward. And it's important that justice is served to the families of the victims of those who are affected during the event.
So we all know that the family of Kaka have rejected the report, and I believe they are planning a news conference tomorrow to give us their thoughts on this. But actually, Mensah, what lessons do you think we have learned, or we are learning about governance structures in the military and the police as it pertains to emergency crowd control situations?
Well, the military commander who went there said that the military doesn't carry rubber bullets as part of its accoutrements and arsenals, munitions. Now, so that sends a clear message. If you call the military, they will use live bullets. That's it. So if we don't, so do we call them? The question is, why do we call them? Is it because we have not adequately resourced the police and enabled them to be able to perform their task of keeping internal security and keeping all of us safe? If that is the reason, why not enable the police to be able to act and act effectively and decisively? I don't think the Ghana Police Service is unable or do not have the men to be able to police effectively, and women, to police effectively. It is because we don't resource them properly. We don't give them the numbers they need. We don't give them the gadgets they need. We don't give them the protection. See, one of the things we need to take note of is that the life of the policeman is as important as the life of the civilian we don't want the police to kill. So if we are not careful, we'll have one or the other. That when the policeman is killed, we will complain. When the civilian is killed, we will complain. The balance is to make sure that the police are properly resourced to be able to protect us, fend off civilian attacks without having to cause harm and lose lives. The other thing I want to talk about is, you see, if you recommend training for RESEC, MUSEC, DISEC, who are the members of RESEC? Who are the members of DISEC, MUSEC, and all that? Who are the members? Now, if you have a regional police commander, and this person needs training, I mean, to be able to do his work as, I mean, does it mean that the police service has no training for regional commander? If you have district police commander, fire service, immigration, all these people, and somebody now have to train them on how to do their work, who is doing the training? What kind of training? So these are some of the questions that we need to ask of this. Now, if people haven't used security advice carefully or haven't sought security advice carefully, we need to speak to that. So it means that very soon the president, when you are elected president, you have to take you to GAFC and train you in security matters all over the place. No, so the issue should be, how do people in political positions get the understanding that they need to take the advice of security actors seriously, that they do not have to make politically appropriate decisions? What kind of emotional intelligence should they develop in handling sensitive matters? That's the issue. So it's important that if we are talking about training for MCEs, regional ministers, district chief executives, let's talk about that. They are the people who will call the shot, and they need to have good advice on what to do. I believe when the regional minister received this report, if he had called the BNI officer and say, I have this report, what should I do? They will give him good advice on how to act. The district chief executive has called the BNI officer, called the district police commander, they sit down, have conversation, they will give him good advice on what to do. But when we think that we have power and we can say anything, that is where the problem is. So it's important to put those things in context, and I think that when we do that as a nation, we will make a lot of progress. I wasn't surprised that Kaka's family say, and the families of those people who lost their lives say, it's not money we need. Because if you give me money, money doesn't compensate for the life that I have lost. But it's important that I have a feeling that my issue matters to you, and you are doing all you can to bring justice. And then people who are going to act next time will think twice before they act in particular ways.
Okay. Dr. Aubyn, I think I think one of the things you indicated was that training was something that you advocated for. And I'm thinking, listening to what Dr. Adzahlie Mensah is saying, that as individual entities, you know, the police, the military, the BNI and all those corporations know what to do individually, but maybe the training is within the context of how they operate when they all come together, and what chain of command exists, and who does what, and what have you. But I think maybe in terms of the chairperson, who may be a civilian and maybe leads through policy and maybe political direction, how important is something on information management, and because information isn't always intelligence, so how important is training them on those kinds of sensitivities important to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future?
Okay, I think that we need to look at the context within which that recommendation was made. And I am pretty sure that that recommendation was made because of the testimony of the regional minister and then the municipal chief executive of Ejura, and some of the lapses in terms of communication and intelligence at the political level and also at the operational level. When we are talking about training, if you listen to me carefully, I was talking about the chairs of those council, of those committees, of those committees.
Yeah.
Because you see, some of them are coming from business background. Some of them are coming from infrastructure, construction. You know, they are coming from different backgrounds. And when it comes to security and intelligence, it's quite important that you take decisions not based on only political expediency, but you take decisions that will address situations on ground based on the advice that you receive from those who are in charge of managing those matters. You see, most of the time, my engagement with the police, military, NIB, national security and all that, point to the fact that most of the time the issue is not about intelligence. It's about how intelligence is used to make policy decisions.
Yes.
The NIB police will provide those intelligence, but it's up to the political heads to take those decisions. And that is why they need to understand why it is important to take certain decisions based on the advice that is provided by those who are trained to do those jobs. Because most of the time, their recommendations are not taken because of the politics around decision making with regards to such issues. And that is why, for me, I think that they need training about these issues in order not to take decisions when they are confronted with one, to rather cause more chaos than to deal with the situation at hand.
Okay, thank you. We are running out of time, so I'll quickly read some of your remarks. Good evening, Madam. I thank all the panelists for their contribution. I can tell you for a fact that governments over the years have neglected the police, and we are now witnessing the effect. Police stations have not been built for the past 30 years, and nobody talks about it. Even accommodation for personnel up to Kolebu is none, and this is Dan from Kolebu. I think the committee has done the best they can in such matters, but for the post-peacekeeping and community, the community must be educated on keeping calm in situations like that, irrespective of what they think has created the problem at hand. And then the third one is that the Ejura committee deviated from their mandate and their point of reference. They did a shoddy work just to favor some persons we all know. Our country is sinking gradually with the help of some political elites. Listen to the way Introduction speaks on the issue as if Ghana. Anyway, so that's and the final comment is on what basis the good people of Ejura embark on the demonstrations, because we all know that the demonstration was organized because some people killed Kaka based on social media activities. And this from Ismaila Horola Ali coming to us. So unfortunately we are running out of time. So Dr. Festus, Aubyn has provided some final conclusions. So if you could just quickly give us yours, Dr. Adzahlie Mensah.
Yeah, just say that it's good that the committee has done what they could do under the circumstances. I believe that if they had more time, they could have reflected better and produced a much more concrete report, but they've done what they could do under the circumstances. As a nation, we should be individually and jointly committed to preventing situations such as this. And I like one of the comments so much. The neglect of the police service and the supply of equipment, accoutrements, training items to them over the years has been serious. That doesn't mean the government has not been doing something for them. A lot is being done for them, but we need to strategically invest in the police service for them to have the tools, the gadgets they need for riot control and for community policing. And we need to give them the training, the quality of training they need under such circumstances. Okay. So I'll call on state authorities to support the police in particular. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us on Talking Point tonight. A very special thank you, as always, to my guests. Via Zoom, we had Dr. Festus Aubyn, Aubyn. He's a regional coordinator, research and capacity building with WANEP. And in the studio with me was Dr. Vincent Adzahlie Mensah, a security analyst. I'm Dr. Anim-Wright, and this has been Talking Points. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Good night, good luck, and as always, please be and stay safe. Till next week.